G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR. It's time for my 2021 team reveal. A lot of blood, sweat and tears have gone into making this side. Many a pre-season conversation with Spills, Jono and all the other blokes in the SuperCoach with DR community. Lots of pre-season research, crunching numbers, looking at player reviews. How did they finish last year? What are their roles going to be looking like going into this year? And after saying all that, I'm still not overly happy. There's still things I'd love to change. Players I'd love to start with that I just can't fit in for one reason or another. And a few of those 50-50 decisions, well, they've got to be made at this stage. And I have done that. Look, the only things that may change is depending on where the rookies are named. We're pretty confident on certain rookies, I think, like your Powells, your Campbells, these type of blokes. But there's some other ones that we're just not sure about. They're sort of on the fringe. We're 50-50 on whether or not they're even going to be playing in round one. So there may be a little bit of reshuffling that I'll have to do, but I think the majority of my premium picks are pretty much locked in anyway. Now, before I do get into the team reveal, I just did want to give a big thank you to all of the SuperCoach with DR community. We've just gone up to 1.5k subscribers in just over a year. I'm really humbled by that, and I really do appreciate the support. I will be back bigger and better than ever this year. The stock market videos, they were a pretty big hit last year. They'll be back with 2 extra columns. I'll leave all the other information I had there, as well as a few projected scores. Still get all the symbols there, who are those traps, the pods, etc. So keep a lookout for those videos. They'll be back weekly, as well as my weekly round reviews, my SuperCoach Swordplay podcast with Spills. That'll be on hopefully on a fortnightly basis, and other random videos that are thrown in here and there also. So again, thanks very much for all the support as well, guys. Does mean a lot. Now, it is time to reveal this side. The first man will start in defence, obviously. It's going to be no surprise. He still hasn't moved. The Seagull, Jake Lloyd. I've said he's locked from day one. I did get a little bit of cold feet, a couple of weeks ago when I heard that he got injured, but I think he's back to full training now. We know what the Seagull's done over the past few years, and I think just like the Daniels of the world and these other type distributors off the halfback, I think that it will really play into Lloyd's hands. There is concerns with Campbell down there as a really good distributor. Will he be taking some of the kick-ins? Dawson, I was a little bit worried about last year, but why was I worried about Dawson in the end? Seagull absolutely smashed it. So he's a lock for me at D1. You can see the red dot there, the injury dot, but I wouldn't be too concerned about that. It wasn't great that he obviously missed that game, but for me, I'm just going to lock him in. He can be really hard to get during the season due to his high price and, ultra consistent nature to his game, I think. So he's a lock for me. The next bloke, I need to have a look here. Yep. It's Rory Laird. So again, I sort of flirted with Laird either starting in defence or starting in the midfield. He was a lock from day one, just a no-brainer selection for mine. Playing through the midfield, I think he'll average really, really well. But I am currently playing him as my D2. But you'll see in a minute that I can also switch him into the midfield as well, which will be handy. The next bloke we've got here was my Mr. Consistent for the second half of last year, Tommy Stewart. Now, this pick was Caleb Daniel, but unfortunately, I cannot fit the helmet in at this stage. It's a pick that, I'm talking about the Daniel pick, that I'm a little bit concerned about not starting, because I think that he can average really, really well this preseason. We know what these halfback types are doing, but I did have to make the decision in the end, and a lot of it did come down to the salary cap, and even though it's, very slight margin between the two players, I had to go with Stewart in the end. As I said, Mr. Consistent for me last year. He's not a bloke that's got a massive, massive ceiling, but he's just ultra consistent. He'll rack up the ball off the halfback, can intercept as well, takes kick-ins. I think there's a lot to like about Tom Stewart, and he does have runs on the board as well. The last 3 seasons, his average has gone up year by year. Last year it was only up by 1 to 2 points, I think it was from memory, but still going in the right direction, I think, for him, and I think that these new rules will suit Tommy Stewart. So a really safe pick for me, and someone that's been in my side for a lot of the preseason. The other bloke I've got now, this is someone that did come in during the Amy series. I was about to say JLT again, but it's Jaden Short. Now, again, massive game that he had during the preseason, a really nice grand final as well. There's a lot of talk about the fact that he doesn't score as well when Hooley's in the side, and that is true. The numbers do check out with that, but we know what Hooley's like. He's very injury prone, so if you're not selecting him off the basis of that fact that when Hooley does play, he doesn't score that well, just remember that Hooley is also very injury prone. He's coming to the end of his career, I think, and I really don't think that he'll affect Short as much as he has in previous seasons. So I think that Short would be a really good pick. And what I love about Short is the fact he does take a lot of the kick-outs, and he just kicks the ball long. And we know that a long kick, even if it just gets to a general pack or a contest, is going to be an effective kick for you. So he kicks rather than handballs the ball. They love to get it in his hands because he's an elite user of the ball as well. So Short, for me, I think will be a really good selection this year. Next, this man's actually been giving me nightmares, and I've just recently added him in, and it is Jordan Clark. So, geez, he's up to 39% now. That's unbelievable. Look, I'm still unsure about this pick because the reason why I'm spending up, and you'll see in a minute where I look at my other lines, why I'm spending up a little bit for some rookies is for job security. Now, I'm spending $240K for someone who I don't love their job security, and I don't think that that's ideal, but I think the pack has sort of spoken there with almost 40% ownership for Clark. And look, we love what he saw from him over the weekend. With Mitch Duncan, people are a little bit concerned about that. And someone did post the other day, Geelong's, quoted best 22. There are a few blokes that are out of action at the moment that won't be playing around that we know of. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried if Clark throws in a stinker or two. I think he'll be straight out of the side. So I need someone in the back line. As you know, I'm not going 5 premiums. The reason for that is basically because I want to leave myself a guaranteed position for Lockie Whitfield when he's back. I think he'll basically be a must-have in our back lines. And also I want to leave a position for a fallen premium as well. The argument could be that you could run Laird as through your midfield for most of the season, and it's probably likely that a premium down back at some stage will get injured or have some sort of delay and might be out for a few weeks, and then you're almost forced to trade someone. So I do understand that, but if possible, I'd love for my 4 premiums to not miss a game and have to trade them out. And I do, as I said, want to leave room for Whitfield and another premium. So that's why I think I've got to get someone like a Clark. I'm not huge on Hayden Young, but again, do you pay that extra 30K for job security? Maybe, but I just don't have that 30K, as you'll see in a minute. So Clark is in for me at the moment. Defensive midfielder DPP status does come in handy, I suppose, but yeah, he does worry me in a way, Clark. The next bloke here, I think, does have pretty good job security, to be quite honest, because the key defensive stocks down there at Adelaide aren't great at the moment. Dudays obviously needs to come in, so Butts will lose some of those intercept marks, I think. Be one of those key defenders, I think, want that lockdown role. But look, even for 176,000, I don't think we can be too picky with our defensive rookies this year. And many people have got someone like a Clark sitting there at D6. So I have seen some teams with 3 rookies starting on field. I think that's absolute bonkers. I just don't think that they'll be available. So I think this is the minimum requirements in the back line at this stage, and we still don't know if one of the next picks that I'm going to put on my bench will be playing or not. The bloke that I think will definitely be playing is, I've spelt that wrong. Yep, Kazitsky. Look, we know what he did during the preseason match, 6 goals. I think Zeeball's lining up on him, but look, he won't do that every week. But I think he's got some pretty good short-term job security, and we don't need him to score really well if he's just sitting there on our benches. So hopefully he'll make us some early cash. I think he will not necessarily be a really slow burn because he only starts at 123K, but a slower burn maybe than what some people are predicting. And the next bloke, I'm hoping he gets a game. I'm really not too sure, and that's Tom Highmore. So if he's selected, obviously I put him on my bench there at D8, but if he's not, yeah, depending on if there's anyone else available, I may look to do a slight mini restructure, I think, if required. But I'm hoping that he does. Fingers crossed. Yeah, I really need him to keep the structure that I've got, I think, at the moment. So no Luke Mcdonald now. Look, I wasn't too impressed. I know there was a lot of clangers there as well, but I think maybe someone like a Zeeball takes a few more of those kick-ins, and I'd much rather just upgrade to him if I have to rather than start him. I think it's just too risky starting him when we've got some really safe premiums down back, I think, this year. And the other bloke, Zach Williams, I would have started with him if he didn't get rubbed out, to be quite honest. I think he's at a really nice price point. I'm going for overall as well as leagues, so I'm not starting with him. If you're going for leagues, then I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to start with him. The only issue is, with his injury history, he may not play round 1 and then do some sort of wacky injury at training. We never know, so it's always a real risk doing that. Certainly if you're going for overall, there's no way that you start Zach Williams, but if you are going for leagues, it is a bit of an option for you, but yeah, certainly not for me, obviously. Now, into the mids. Am I starting Neil? Am I not? He hasn't left my side, and he won't. Look, I didn't love what I saw during the preseason match from him, but look, he got into gear for basically one quarter of the game. I think it was 13 disposals, and I just thought, yeah, he's pretty much like Lachie Neale of old there. I think he just sort of took the foot off the pedal a little bit. It was only a preseason game. We know that the superstars of the AFL don't necessarily have to go 100% like some of the other blokes that may be on the fringe, really, fighting for one or two spots come round one. So I'm not overly concerned with Neale. I think he's over that injury as well. And he doesn't really need a massive preseason because he's done it for years. He's an ultra professional. And I think that even with those limited minutes in the preseason, that he can still start like an absolute house on fire. So I have been tempted to downgrade him to a couple of other players, but it just doesn't feel right for me. And I'm not taking the risk. He will lose money, but I'm just going to lock Neale in at this stage. Another bloke who has been locked for me since day one, these two blokes just have not left, is Clayton Oliver. So I would have loved to see him play during the preseason match, but even so, I'm going to stick with my gut on Clary. He's been one of the players that I've said has been a lock all of this preseason. He's got a lot of runs on the board, a really consistent type player. You may argue with maybe less stoppages that will harm someone like an Oliver, but we saw Melbourne's midfield during the preseason match. It was absolutely decimated. They need Oliver. He's going to play all of his minutes through the midfield, maybe rest up forward on the occasion, but we know where he plays his football. We know what he's great for. That's good for SuperCoach scoring. Look, I'd love to see him develop a bit more of an outside game this year, but, even at 656 for me, he's a lock. I've had a little bit of cold feet lately, sort of similar to Neale, but I'm just going to back my judgment, back my gut, and not get sucked into someone like a Bontempelli who scored really, really well during the preseason. I've also skipped on Jack McRae and kept the bloke that I have been really, really keen on. I was going to type Zeret. Zach Merritt. We saw what he did over the weekend. I was a little bit spewing that he went that well because his ownership did rise a little bit. I wanted him to be a bit of a pottish Uber premium for me, but a few other people have jumped on board, and for good reason. I think he's probably the safest selection for me in this year's midfield, to be quite honest. Why is that? Because he does have runs on the board. He's ultra durable. I think coming up to to the free agency period at the end of the year, he'll want to put a big year in this year to ensure that he gets a really nice pay rise and a hefty contract there, whether it be Essendon or another club. But he's got an inside game, he's got an outside game, racks the ball up, even with a lot of clangers over the weekend. He still scored that well. It was a high 120, I think, wasn't it? Low 130s, I think, from memory. So he's locked for me, Zach Merritt, and a ultra safe selection, I think, for me this year. The next bloke as well, yeah, I've got him. He was in, he was out, and I've actually got this bloke in place of Caleb Daniel. So I restructured a little bit here. I originally did have Daniel down back and I skipped on Dangerfield, but reviewing his upcoming fixture, his scoring history, even though it's been on a downward trajectory, I think last year he was spending a lot of time forward. I think that forward time will decrease, his midfield time will increase, and I think that's good signs for Patrick Dangerfield. And I think if you own him, you've got to own him early because he's got a great early draw, and I expect him to dominate during the first 6 rounds of the season. Comes up against Adelaide where he posts really good numbers historically, and I'm even thinking of him as a vice captain or captaincy option along with Maxi Gawn if I can loop him with my loophole. I didn't even put, did I put Highmore in? Sorry, I'll have to go back there in defence and put Highmore in. Not sure what happened there to Highmore. Apologies for that. I'll get back to him. Yep. But Dangerfield, look, he's a champion. He's a champion of the game, and he's been an ultra premium for us for a number of years now. I clearly think that he'll be the number one scoring forward with only Josh Dunkley competing with him. I think it could be a close race to the end in regards to averages and total points between the two. But Dangerfield, for me, I think you've got to start with him, even though, there's been a few concerns about him during the preseason with the injury that did linger on a little bit from the grand final, but he does look cherry ripe to me at the moment and didn't look overly affected. So it's a bit of a risk with that injury during the preseason, but I'll be starting with Paddy Dangerfield. I really like him in my side, and at 610, even when I look at that midfield list, he's probably the bloke that I like the best at that price, I think. And then next, we actually go all the way down to Paddy Dow. So with Dow, he didn't score overly well in the preseason match, but I did love his role. We know that Zach Williams is out for the first round of the season, so I think he'll get even more opportunity. Look, it's only short term, I know that. It's only one round, but if he can impress, particularly during round one, then I think that will bode really, really well for his CBAs going into the season. I think he's got good job security. I've really liked what he's produced during the preseason. Improved certain areas of his game. Still not great by foot, but got some really nice hands, I think. An early draft pick, has DPP status. I think good job security. So at 202k, I think he fits well as my M5 at the moment. The next bloke we've got, I think, is another pretty much must-have rookie. The best kick in the game I've heard already are in the top 3 by many really, really respected AFL observers is Braden Campbell. So again, DPP status. I think he's a lock to play round 1. As I said, an elite disposer of the ball. I don't know how much of the ball that he'll get. And this is the only worry, I suppose, with someone like a Seagull is that, maybe the Swannies will want to get the ball in his hand because he's such a great user. So I see him as a really safe selection. We're paying up, obviously, for him and for Dale as well, but we're paying up for job security. He scored really well in the 80s over the weekend as well. So I think for me, he's pretty much a lock as a rookie. And I've currently got him there at my M6 on-field as well. Great on-field option. The next bloke, every team should have him. What's his ownership? You're joking, 51%. That's absolutely nuts for me. He should be in 100% of sides, I think. Tom Powell. Look, we know what his junior numbers are like, or his Sandful numbers, sorry. Absolutely elite. Now, does that translate into AFL? Not necessarily, but you can basically lock this bloke to play every week, I think, if he's fit. Look, maybe if he drops a couple of really bad games and they'll look to give someone else an opportunity there, but he has shown that he can score well. I think he's got a pretty good role on the side as well. I'm just going to start with him. There's not a lot of conversation with him. I think you should just pick Power, to be quite honest. The next bloke, really excited by this guy. If you're a Swannies fan, you'd be absolutely wrapped. Errol Goulden, really exciting. I think he's one of those blokes that doesn't need a lot of the ball to have a high impact on the game. And for me at this stage, I think he is an on-field option. A bench to on-field, but yeah, he can be really damaging without getting a lot of the ball. Next bloke, didn't score overly well on the weekend, but I do think that he's got a good role there, hopefully on the wing for us. It's Connor Downey. There's been a lot of talk about him during the preseason coming out of Hawthorn. They've been impressed with him, and I don't think that Clarko will necessarily look at that SuperCoach score. It's how he played his role, and I think he played his role okay. I think it was 17 possessions or close to that. So, yeah, he's okay for a bench option, but wouldn't be wrapped having to play him on field. Next bloke, I'm not sure if he plays. I hope he does, but it's Anthony Scott from the Dogs, coming out of the back line, but did score a couple of goals there. So did he move forward? I'm not too sure. I thought he was playing the majority of his time back. I think there's actually a pretty good chance that he actually debuts. Johannesson, he's out of favour at the moment. Crozier, he's down with a collarbone, I think it is. So there's an opportunity, I think, down there, and I hope that this bloke gets it. 102k mid-forward DPP would be absolutely ideal. So Scott is a starter for me for now. And the other bloke I've got is actually going to be my loop going into this year. I can't get him a loop in the rucks at this stage because Flynn, I think, is a must-have. And it's Aiden Fife from the Gold Coast. Now, he's a midfield defender, and obviously I've got Laird there. I've got Jordan Clark there as well. So I think that fits really well. I can utilise him over a couple of lines. As I said, ideally you get it as your R3, your loop, but I don't think anyone's going to be doing it this year, given the fact that we've got Flynn or even Meek available for us there. Even Paul Hunter, if you want to go there also. So for me, that's where I'm going with my loop this year. Fife is the man for me. I think Brockman's probably the best one from Hawthorn if you're looking for a loop as well. Into the rucks now. I'm going to get through this very, very quickly. I've talked about these two blokes to death over the pre-season. I'm just going to lock them in. It's Brodie Grundy, Max Gawn. I didn't have to type Grundy in there, did I? And I've already talked about Matt Flynn as well. So just lock the two big boys in. With Max Gawn, look, he may drop 5 to 10 points on his average, but he's so tough to get in. He'll certainly go down in price. That's an absolute given. But there is no way that I'm not starting with Max Gawn this year, particularly his first 6 rounds. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think he comes up against Flynn. It would probably be Paul Hunter as well. He plays Freo. it's just ridiculous, his opening 6 rounds. So he's going to go nuts, in my opinion. Less stoppages, maybe less opportunity for hit-outs for him, but we know what he can do around the ground. He can take intercept marks down back. He can be damaging up forward. Not the best kick for goal, but a really good contested mark up there. There's a lot that this man can do, and no way that I'm not starting with him. Brodie Grundy's the same. He's an absolute lock for me. Didn't have a great year last year. Reasons for that, though, I think. I'm just going to start with him. Not going to even talk too much about him. And Flynn as well, I think he's a bit of a no-brainer. Does Briggs play down back? Possibly, but I think he'll be the main man that they look for while Braden is out as a third. I don't think Mumford comes in. He's just too old and too slow now. Mumford can smash around some bodies, don't get me wrong, but I think the game's just past him. So Flynn I really like as my R3, and I think he'll be a really popular R3 as well for most people this year. Now the next bloke, I talked him down in the podcast I did with Spills. That was actually before the preseason game. Then he comes out and goes absolutely nuts, and I think, oh, geez, I'm going to get him straight back in the side. That's Josh Dunkley. And to be honest, before Bevo's comments, he was an absolute lock for me all the preseason. So he was out of the side for probably a week and a bit maybe. But after his performance, I just had to get him in. We know what his ceiling's like. I've done a review, or I might not have done a review on him, but I've done certainly a forward review, during the preseason, and talked in length about his ceiling, looked at his previous numbers as well. So I feel a little bit silly for sort of taking him out of my side for that week and a half. But I did get spooked by him, but I've come back to my senses now after this game, and he's an absolute lock in my side at the moment. The next bloke as well, I've been a little bit up, a little bit down with this bloke, but it's Tom Phillips. So the reason why I've got Phillips in my side is pretty much his price point. I was looking at someone like a Caldwell, and I'm just not quite sure if he can be a keeper. Again, I'm not 100% sure that Phillips will be a keeper, but what I'm trying to do here is basically select my F6 for the year, basically. I think he's got some okay durability. We've seen him go 90 plus in a season before. Now, his preseason numbers, that's not the only reason why I'm selecting Tom Phillips. I'm not necessarily getting sucked in by this pick. I'm also not getting sucked in by the inside midfield minutes that he played as well. I do understand that O'Meara didn't play, Mitchell didn't play, but remember in the the practice match before this, I think O'Meara did play and Phillips did have some inside minutes. Again, Mitchell wasn't there. But also, O'Meara, someone like an O'Meara, he's very injury prone, so who expects O'Meara to play every game this season? Certainly not me. So there will be games where he will spend more time inside than other games. Look, I certainly don't expect to see him spend a lot of time in there, but he will get some bonus time in there that he didn't see in his best averaging year at Collingwood. There's never been a time where he's spent even, I think, a fair amount of time in the inside. So even at that CBA attendance is only around that 10% mark, I still think that gives him a little bit of an edge to really boost that average up to a 95 maybe. And I think that's probably enough for me for my F6 this year, given the fact that I'm just really unsure about a lot of the options. I've obviously skipped Dusty there. He's not my side, but I think he's the type of player that you can get around that price really at any stage of the year. He has those hot streaks and those, I suppose, cold streaks. And I've talked a lot about that during that forwards video as well when I was reviewing Dusty. So I have skipped him to Phillips. I think he can be a good accumulator. Doesn't use the ball overly well, but there's certainly a role there for him with that inside. Hopefully, small amount of inside minutes. I think that will help him. So Phillips I'm selecting at this stage, but not with a huge amount of confidence, but hopefully an F6 at that price point. The next man here is Jack Zeeball. I think we've got to start with him because he kicked 6 goals on him, but I like the role that he played there. I think Noble looks to be persisting with that role. Looked a little bit lost at times, but overall, he scored well. You really can't ignore that. Was taking some kick-outs, and I don't think, as I said, that he played overly well for his side, but he scored well SuperCoach-wise and certainly did enough for me just to lock him in. I think, again, he's a bit of a no-brainer selection that you've pretty much just got to start with in your side. Next man as well, I like his role coming off half-back. Jarman Impey. Now, to be quite honest, I'm not too sure why he got subbed out during that preseason match at half-time, but I don't think it was due to any sort of an injury. Are they managing him just to be really cautious or give someone else an opportunity? I'm not too sure, but I know that they weren't worried about anything in particular. And I don't think that means anything in regards to him starting round one. So I really like his role off half back. There's certainly extra points back there this year, I think. And at 212k, I'm paying up for that job security. You can obviously see by now as well that I've skipped Joey Danaher. I'm shattered about that. I would love to start with Big Joey, but unfortunately, I had to run with Zeeball in the end, I think. I think he's probably a bit of a safer pick than Big Joe. So a bit spewing about that because I do love the Danaher selection as well, but just didn't have the money. The next bloke, Chad Warner. I think he certainly plays, and I think you've almost got to have this bloke because at 144k, you're saving 60 odd k on the Dowls, the Impies, and you're saving 80 or more k on the Danaher type. So I think at 144, I really liked what I saw from Warner. Had a really nice impact on the game. Looked dangerous when he was around the ball and when he got the ball. Got a bit of experience last year, a taste of AFL football, some low scores, but the role's different, I think, this year. That looks pretty friendly for him. And at 144k, I will certainly be starting with him if he's named round one, and I'm 95% sure that I think he'll be starting round one. Next bloke here, I think he plays round one. I'm not quite sure. Bergman, there's been a little bit of talk about what happens with him when someone like a Hartley comes into the side. So, look, I'm not overly sure on this pick. And again, there's a little bit of time to, chop and change some of these rookies, your sort of F6 to F8 types. So at this stage, I think he's in. Could push up to a wing. And he's one of those blokes that's not coming in their first year. He was drafted last year, so he's already had a year in the system, even though he hasn't obviously debuted yet. So Bergman, I'm starting with at this stage. The other bloke everyone should have as well is obviously James Rowe, small forward from Adelaide. So look, I expect him to score okay. I think you can probably even have him on the field as that F6, but I may start with him on the bench, I may start with him on the field, I'm not too sure, but he's just such a rock solid option for job security. He's scored well in the lower leagues in the past, a really damaging type player, looked really good to me, and just a lock to play each week if fit, I think, James Rowe. So just select him and don't think too much about it. And the last bloke I've got here for a bit of DPP swing is Brockman from Hawthorn as well. So you can select this bloke in your midfield. Again, I think if he plays round one, he's a bit of a no-brainer. He's not going to have the impact that he had during the preseason game every week, but if he can bob up from here to there with a few goals to his name in a match, he'll spike up pretty quickly, I think. And it's good to see that he does have a little bit of scoring potential anyway. So I think his job security should be pretty good, and we can't be too picky with a lot of these rookies. And the reason why I'm starting, obviously, up forward is because of that DPP swing. So if you look at all of my bench options on the midfield there, or not all of them, sorry, I've got Downey who doesn't have that DPP, but I've got Scott and I've got Fife as well. They can link up with the Brockmans. Dunkley as well, Phillips have that DPP status, which is really handy. Even Campbell and Powell, Campbell and Dow, not Powell, have that DPP status. So I think that will be really important for us this year, being able to swing players around, because job security for a lot of these rookies, particularly first-year rookies, will be really shaky. And look, the other thing that I may look to do, as I said, is restructure down back if I have to. I have run with 5 premiums for a lot of the preseason, sort of the second half of the preseason, and particularly when these new rules came into place and we got to see what that actually looks like. Yeah, there was a lot of defenders that really, really caught my eye, but you can't start with everyone, unfortunately, but that's what I'm looking to do this year. So I suppose no fake premiums for me. If I'm paying over 500k for a bloke, they must have had runs on the board. So I'm not going for any of those real breakout types. Clark, you could argue, maybe one of those breakout picks, but he's more there due to necessity, I think, of having someone around that price in your defensive line. And apart from that, look, some of these players, I said, have come into the side, like your Short and Clark pretty recently. And pretty much on every line, I've tried to select who I think will be the top 2 averaging players by the end of the season. In the back line, that's obviously Lloyd, Laird. In the midfield, that's Neil and Oliver. In the rucks, that's a really obvious one, Gawn and Grundy. And then the forwards, that's Dangerfield and Dunkley. And I am playing Danger at this stage in the forward line. But as I said, I've got Brockman, for example, there is that swing. So I really count him as a forward that's just resting in my midfield at the moment. Hopefully that's not going to be his role actually come the real season. So there you go. The battery is running low, so I think that's a bit of a sign to end the video now. Thanks again, guys, as I said, for all the great conversation and discussion during the preseason. I've had an absolute ball. Please give me your feedback on what you think the side looks like. And remember to also join the SuperCoach with DR group. I'll put the the group code up as soon as I finish and say goodbye. And feel free to join that group. The more the merrier, and it'll be a bit of fun, I think, this year, and hopefully a bit of banter as well on the channel. So thanks again, guys. Good luck with all of your preseason selections. It's going to be chaos in the next couple of days, but good luck with everything. Make sure that you leave a fair bit of time to tinker with your SuperCoach sides, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Good luck. See you soon, guys. Bye.